Potomac, you know, neat thing with it, it goes all the way up to Washington, D.C. Truly not a lot of fishing gets done up that way. Seems like that's as high as most people, you know, really ever do very good. Certainly a cool fishery. Hey, if you catch a fish off of a piece of wood, you know, make sure that you hit it multiple times throughout the day. That particular piece of wood, you know, there might be several in this area or this dock or whatever, but especially with that hard cover, they're like, make sure you fish that particular piece of cover again. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the BPT stage preview for, let's see, what would this be? This would be, we got one more after this. So this must be stage 6. Took me a minute to get there. All these are running together. But yeah, stage 6, BPT, Potomac River, or Potomac, as some people call it. But the Potomac River up in Maryland, a really cool fishery. It is a tidal fishery. It's the first tidal fishery that I ever fished personally, and one that I've had some decent tournaments on. I don't think I've ever had a top 10 on the Potomac, but I have had some decent tournaments here over the years. And you know, like most tidal fisheries, they're pretty much shallow water deals. You know, I mean, you don't catch a lot of bass on tidal fisheries honestly more than 5 feet deep. A lot of times not more than 3 feet deep, but certainly not more than 5 feet deep. And the Potomac has a relatively small tide swing. It's like a couple feet, 1.5 feet, 2 feet, maybe 2.5 at times. You know, but a pretty small tide swing. One quick story of, you know, just an old memory. Dad practiced with me up here for I think it was for an Everstart one time. We were down here around Aquai. I think one of these down here around Aquai. We were a pretty good ways away. It was late in the evening, and we were practicing. And it looked like it was storming in the summertime. It was storming back up towards Smallwood. And he's like, we need to go. Let's fish a little longer. You need to go. We need to go. It's too late in the evening anyway. Finally, I keep delaying. And it's perfectly flat. There ain't a ripple down there where we're at. We run about 10 miles, smooth as silk. And then it gets a little choppy, and then it's blowing. And then before we get to turn in there to Smallwood State Park, I mean, it is getting it. And they said, I told you we should have left a long time ago. I mean, so I never did end up living that one down. He definitely gave me a hard time for staying out too late on that stormy evening of practice. But just memories that I think of when you look back at some of these places I've been over the years. It has been a number of years, to be honest, since I have fished on the Potomac River. So, you know, this is a place that changes year to year anyway. The grass seems to come up different every single year that I have ever been there. Some places that have a lot of grass one year won't have much grass the next year. And I think that's just, I mean, man, that's tidal waters. You know, some places the grass seems to come up really good every single year, and some places it doesn't. Being here late June, spawn's over, done with. That's well in the past. You know, you don't have to worry about any of that. And I mean, we're heat of the summer at this point. This is one of the hottest places on earth, in my opinion, that I have ever fished. Being that it is tidal, obviously it's, you know, really close to sea level, very humid, very, very hot place. But we're still here kind of in the beginning of summer, truthfully. You know, so some of that stuff that starts happening in July and August, probably not going to be happening yet. And that's the stuff that, honestly, that I really, really like. I would prefer to fish here, as odd as it may seem, in August. The fishing wouldn't be as good, but in August, you get way, way back in some of those creeks, and some of them that flow in have cooler water coming in the backs of them, and those fish will really, really load up in them. I've had some incredible times fishing like that. Again, I mean, that time of the year and 5 fish limits, man, you catch 14 pounds, you've had a pretty big day, but you might catch 20 or 30, you know, 1.5 pound, 2.5 pound fish doing that, back in some of those creeks and watching them swim around, that kind of stuff. It can be a really fun way to do it. But being here late June like we are, I expect there to be a good topwater bite. That's one thing with tidal fisheries in the summer. There's almost always a topwater bite. So a frog, buzzbait, walking baits, poppers, that type of stuff should be a good topwater bite. There's always a soft plastic bite here too. You know, whether that's a weightless, you know, sticko, or a, you know, a lightweight Texas rig dragging through some of that stuff. Swim jig is always a player. A bladed jig is oftentimes a player. And if there is some good mats, man, punching is definitely a good player. The big thing with these tidal fisheries, and I think about the last time that we fished on the Potomac, you know, there were some areas that Andy and I were fishing, and he had a really good event in that particular one. But was figuring out, you know, the same area, the way you'd catch them at low tide, how you could catch those fish at high tide might be completely different. You know, it might be a deal where on high tide you're catching them on top water, and low tide you're flipping, or you're outside of the grass or whatever. You know, or that you figure out a particular window when you can punch in it and catch them. It's all about getting in those areas where you know there's a population of fish, and being able, you know, to definitely figure out the bite windows that go along with that. Because, you know, last year on the James, it seemed like it was a little bit more of a deal where you could kind of run the tide a little bit, and that was our first experience with every fish counts on tidal fisheries. And I really thought more guys would try to run the tide than they did, or that would be the better way to do it. But it ended up guys were successful, just like they always are on tidal fisheries, either just getting in an area and fishing, you know, whatever tide they were on, or vice versa, running the tide, you know, kind of in a zone or in a section of river or something. So it really showed us that you could do either one on an every fish counts format as well. You know, so that being the case, I think there will be, you know, grass that plays in this event, and I also think that hardcover will play, but I do think the hardcover will play more for running the tide and really kind of following that. So, you know, more of that main river type of stuff, you know, where that's fishing old barges or that's docks or, you know, whatever type of stuff like that. I do think that bite lends itself better to the, you know, running the tide and trying to be at those places at those optimum times, where the grass type of bite is really just about getting in those areas and fishing and figuring out, you know, at certain tide windows, whichever one is going to, you know, is going to be the one that you need to focus in on more. So, Potomac, you know, neat thing with it, it goes all the way up to Washington, D.C. Truly not a lot of fishing gets done up that way. Really, once you get up, you know, near the interstate bridge, seems like that's as high as most people, you know, really ever do very good. But it's really from that interstate bridge down, you know, really down to a Kauai or so. But a lot of tournaments go out of Smallwood State Park and directly across from that over on the Virginia side. You know, that's kind of where everything seems to happen at Leesylvania over there. So there's always, you know, that part right there, you could not fish anything else, and there will be people in the top 10 for sure right there. But there'll be people that run on down here to the south and fish some of these, you know, these creeks down here and stuff. Typically, even that Port Tobacco is in play. But man, I know stuff has, you know, people have done well down in there, but you usually don't even have to bother going that far. It's kind of a, you know, 5, 10, 15-minute run from there is kind of where most of it seems to happen. So cool, certainly a cool fishery. One thing about, I guess it's truly about tidal fisheries, but the first time that I ever saw it was on the Potomac, and somebody told me, they're like, hey, if you catch a fish off of a piece of wood, you know, make sure that you hit it multiple times throughout the day. That particular piece of wood, you know, there might be several in this area or this dock or whatever, but especially with that hard cover, they're like, make sure you fish that particular piece of cover again. And I remember one day I only caught like 6 keepers or 7 keepers or something in a tournament on the Potomac, but I think I caught 4 of them off of one log. Caught like 2 one time, come back and caught another one, left, come back and caught another one. And, you know, it was just something that you do a lot on tidal fisheries. I remember Andy last year on the James River, you know, just down the coast from this, he had one particular duck blind he caught like 20 fish off of a couple of different days. So that's something that certainly happens. I don't understand why that is. I don't understand how it works, but it absolutely does happen. And it seems like it really happens a lot on those tidal fisheries. So finding those key pieces of cover can really go a long way in a place like this.